Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. Welcome to a quick little discussion-y dealy type of thing here today about chokers. So chokers are an item that have been around for most of the series in different forms. Sometimes they were called just kind of charms or necklaces or what have you. But either way, you know, religious necklace. It's just kind of always been a thing there. Now, the version back in SNES basically just gave you a sort of general affinity boost. Honestly, as far as I could tell, they didn't really seem to do very much at all. As far as the PSP version, that's typically the one that ended up getting remembered the most, giving you a hidden affinity boost with your particular element. Now, this was kind of unusual because it didn't really work the same way as many other items, because typically whenever you went and got an affinity boost for your item, you normally just got a extra rank of augment, which you just kind of threw on your augment pile, and then additionally you got a resistance to that same element. Resisting your own element was a bit of a kind of like a who cares kind of moment, but either way, you typically just went and looked for augment stacks, and normally folks would end up using these for the augment stack, and then come to the realization that, I seem to be getting more than that augment stack should be giving me, because the accessory slot is a little bit different from the other slots in PSP, namely that it gave you full benefit of both your offensive and defensive bonuses. Now, in this particular case, whether it was intended or an oversight, this also meant that you were getting a hidden scaling bonus whenever using a particular element. Now, I say scaling bonus, it's more like it is a bonus applied to the scaling part of it, give or take. From the simplest way to put it is it increased your maximum potential damage with that particular thing. It usually wasn't mind-blowing. Honestly, there was always the argument over which was better, earrings or chokers. Personally, I was always on the earring camp of things, just because this was one of those cases where it's like prevailing element, where it's like theoretically it's increasing your maximum, but really the big bonus in PSP came from penetration. Realistically, once your bonuses went wacky, they were already wacky. If you were not achieving penetration, you weren't achieving anything anyway. So the augment part of it was interesting, but the other part of it was kind of a, it's there, I guess, sure, whatever kind of a situation. Meanwhile, the earrings gave you very, very large universal resistances back in PSP. Now, these all function a little bit differently, and in many cases, just looking at the numbers, this may look like a bit of a direct nerf, but just like every dang thing else in Reborn, this is going to be a situation where it's flipped on its head. So, alright, let's look at this a little bit closer. See, as far as the hidden bonus thing, funnily enough, they actually switched the positions of the earrings and the chokers this time around, meaning that this one's going to be more of a defensive tool and this one's going to be more of an offensive tool. While it still has its universal resistances, 5% is actually worth a lot more in this context than the like 20 or whatever, I think it was like 30% bonus that you got back in PSP, because typically the scaling part of it didn't really get a chance to shine as often due to the previously mentioned penetration thing. So normally the scaling bonuses didn't show up as much. It usually was cases where like archers could achieve maximum penetration on their bows way earlier, and so they tended to see those bonuses way earlier, which is what made them look overpowered, whereas, Japanese players were wondering what we were talking about, because they were getting all those bonuses on all of their equipment, because the scaling in that game in the Japanese version is different. Well, not the scaling, but the stat increases are 10 times higher in the original Japanese version, meaning that they got to see more of this stuff in play. Anyway, point being, though, throughout all of this, that the earring this time around is actually the one that gets the kind of wacky hidden bonus, where its addition to skill ranks will cause shots to do dramatically higher damage, since shots scale off of weapon skill, and you can essentially combine your elemental weapon or your heaven general weapons and stuff like that with stuff like this. So, for example, at rank 40, they're already locked in doing about 400 damage, but then you throw on, let's say, another 30 off of your weapon skill over here, and then you throw another 20 off your weapon skill over here. It caps out at 90, by the way. You're basically throwing out like 1500s with a lobber shot, and those are more or less bypassing defenses. So either way, the kind of weird niche, bonus to a particular thing in a particular situation, that's over in the earrings now. But what's the actual use case for these chokers now? Are they dramatically nerfed? Well, the thing is, they're a bit of a different story. So First and foremost, the most obvious one is the actual coverage of resistances. Due to the actual value of your stat rings kind of going down over time, this does create this interesting situation where that little bit of vitality there, or that little bit of a difference between your different rings, is not really going to make that much of a difference in a lot of situations. So, like, for example, right here, from a Ring of Deafness, they're going from +5 to +8, and again, that's still +8. You can get that off many pieces of equipment. That's not exactly too major on its own, but at the same time, you can say, okay, I'm being hit by, by something that I'm really weak to, so if I were to go and, say, equip this item that gives me a bigger resistance against that thing, that could potentially cover my weakness a decent bit, So they're basically there as an elemental shield of sorts. It's not going to be as good as something like an Instiller or what have you, but on one level, as just a passive everyday benefit, that's what they're there for. But they also have another use case that I personally find way more interesting. And that is if you're looking for any situations that will essentially operate off a percentage of your MP. So, that's one of the few things that this thing gives you. It's a +15 MP boost. Not many items will give you an MP boost, and there's many situations when you'd want to meet particular thresholds. So, for example, right now, we're in Palace of the Dead. In any other area with that additional 10 levels on that cleric, she does not need insight. All she would need is the Saint Ring Choker, and she would be able to achieve 400 MP, which means that if she gets knocked out and she is resurrected, she will always have the option to go resurrect somebody else. Now, this also applies for cases of, like, wizards that you want to use Paradigm Shift, or let's say you have somebody going and using Heaven Judge. Just basically any type of big expensive ability that you want to go have a lot of MP for, you're going to want to meet a particular threshold. And things like Fruits of the Adept, as well as Resurrection, will operate off of a percentage of your HP and MP. So, if you will always come back with 25% in this particular case, then that will essentially mean that she can still use this trick in Palace of the Dead, even though she's leveled down, just courtesy of the Saint King Choker. Like, if she were to take this off, she would be stuck at 385, because nothing else is going to be giving her that MP bonus, which means that suddenly this trick that was really useful in San Bronzo wouldn't work in here. But coming in and being able to put this on, she can just barely coast into 400, giving her the ability to keep using that same trick that she was using before. Essentially, while they are a bit more situational than, damage number to go burr in all situations, it is something that's pretty handy to have on hand. It's just something that you typically will you may not necessarily see in absolutely every situation, but it's pretty useful to have there. Like I said, the other ones are going to be particularly handy in situations like this, where we can go and boost his skill above the maximum here, in order to make these shots over here work particularly hard. But either way, as far as an MP booster, I've generally, or MP booster as well as a shield item, it's something that I found particularly handy on stuff like clerics here. This doesn't mean that they're always going to be able to pull off those thresholds, but it's just a tool to allow you to attempt to do something like this. Like right here, he actually ended up being just 5 MP shy of being able to pull off this particular setup. I'm sure that if I had, like, let's say, I'm sure some of these items must boost MP somewhere, like some Water Greaves or whatnot, he would just barely be able to pull off this build. But either way, that's a story for another day here. So, just something to consider. Again, it's just a particularly handy tool to have on hand in these kinds of situations. And yeah, hopefully that helps to explain it a little bit. Hope you all have yourselves a good one, and take care. Thanks for stopping by.